Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
It was January of 2024 when Marc Miller, then Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada Minister, announced a cap on the amount of international students getting visas to study in Canada. Ottawa issued around 360,000 student visas that year, marking a 35% drop from the previous year. And this year, 2025, they announced they'll be issuing 437,000. Now, to paint a bit of a picture, the IRCC reported having issued just over 1 million study permits by the end of January last year. Now, the cap is all part of a 2-year trial period to combat pressures imposed on the housing and healthcare system, as well as, in their words, strike a balance between the integrity of the immigration system and the quality of education received. Now, since those cuts were put in place, colleges across Canada, especially in Ontario, began to crunch the numbers, calculating the kinds of deficits they were in store for, with cuts to revenue made from international student fees, tuition prices that doubled, sometimes tripled that of domestic fees. Then came the layoffs, the temporary suspension of programs, the shuttering of campuses, all to make way for a new budget with less money coming in. Colleges like Humber, Centennial, Mohawk, Fanshawe, one by one announcing cuts to several programs like tourism and hospitality, animation, business, and a popular one that seemed to make the list from basically all colleges was journalism. Now, I am a journalist and I understand what's at stake here, but I don't think it takes being a journalist to understand the gravity that comes with cutting programs that teach the very thing that democracy stands on: how to tell a story, and most importantly, how to tell the truth. Some of the very journalists you see when you turn on the TV to get the 5 p.m. news or turn on the radio to hear a traffic report proudly come from the several college programs that are being sacrificed as a result of this new cap. And in a digital era of rapidly changing forums and needs from consumers, as well as an emboldened movement of distrust and apprehension from official news sources, the programs that teach the basics in reporting, community building, and investigating are needed now more than ever. I'm Maria Kestane, and today on The Big Story, I'm talking to Gina Lorentz, professor and coordinator for Fanshawe College's Multimedia Journalism program and president of the Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation for Canada. Gina, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Maria. Good to be here.
So being a professor and a program coordinator, you are on the front lines, essentially, of this trial period on part of the Canadian government to cap the number of international student visas. Now that we're halfway through Ottawa's 2-year temporary timeframe, what kind of effects are you seeing in your classrooms and around campus so far?
Yeah, it's definitely affecting Fanshawe campus, and we're hearing about the other campuses as well, having to make some decisions about programs that are cut because of enrollment concerns and also changes to work permits, that if an international student would be able to come here, what would they be able to do with that credential? And so, yeah, there are all kinds of changes going on. If we talk about our journalism program in particular, we had always had a very limited number of international students in our particular media program. So it has not affected our program the same way it's affected some other ones.
Yeah, right. Now, one of the reasons quoted by Immigrations, Refugees and Citizenship Canada to put the program in action in the first place was to enrich the Canadian academic experience, among other reasons, such as alleviating housing, healthcare, and other pressures on social programs. I know you can only speak for the students at Fanshawe, but do you find any validity to that reasoning? Do you think the life for international students was less than before the cuts came into place?
I honestly have not heard too much about that part of it. I know I understand the labor market aspect and what they were expecting when they got here and how it's changed maybe for them during that time period. So they're sort of caught in the middle of some things if that's some of the concern related to it. But
I mean, I also I see on social media of, some international students living in houses that definitely don't house the number of people that are living there. And that's a part on the onus of bad landlords that want to make more
Sure.
money and kind of are turning a blind eye to the fact that there's so many people in their house. Do you think there's that shock value when international students come to Canada and they realize, maybe it's a bit harder to secure a job after school or to, I guess, live life in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, quite possibly. I think that is the situation. It's partly just the economy itself, and it's not even targeted particularly at international students. But I think everyone, it's a big decision to come to another country, first of all. It's going to be difficult for a variety of reasons. And then to have, if it is that situation where it's difficulty budgeting for the tuition is sometimes 3 times as much, your housing, your food, inflationary pressures, all of that sort of thing definitely comes into play. And I expect that it is difficult even in the best of circumstances. And some things were probably exacerbated because of what's going on with the economy as well. And coming out of COVID and all kinds of things, right?
Yeah. And I think just like the cutting of these college programs, it paints the broader picture of just how reliant a lot of these post-secondary institutions are on international student fees that in most cases are astronomically more than domestic student fees. What do you make of that reliance?
Well, I think the reliance is not too hard to track the facts on that one, where there has been no increase in funding to post-secondary institutions by the province for a number of years and holding tuition with a freeze. And if you look across Canada, I believe the number is funded at 44% compared to other post-secondary institutions in other provinces. So it left probably little room or opportunity to be able to continue to operate programs without finding another source of income, and that seemed to be the route.
Now, Ontario colleges are known for being powerhouses, essentially, of pumping out journalists and broadcasters into the real world, thanks to a combination of being in the field, teachers that are from the field, and the internship and the co-op opportunities. And when you look at the programs being cut, you can't help but notice a trend that includes a lot of these journalism programs or broadcasting programs getting the boot. Of course, there are other trends in programs being cut, like tourism and hospitality programs or certain business programs. Why do you think the colleges are turning to media and journalism programs as some of the first to go?
Yeah, I think there is probably twofold, or maybe even more than that. We might get into a few things on that one. Um, Part of it is probably enrollment for some of those programs. With you see in the industry where it's also in some regards shrinking, making cuts, finding efficiencies because it's not the same ad dollars or way to fund media for private broadcasters with rebroadcast of shows in multiple markets, things like that. So possibly that's part of it. It's also expensive to run a media program with the equipment, the support staff, maintaining that type of thing. And I mean, I guess those are probably two of the main reasons. Enrollment is a factor and cost to run the program. So if it's costing too much to run the program versus the interest and potentially looking at labor trends, sometimes that is part of the decision, I guess, when you're looking at the dollars and cents of it all.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch on labor trends a little bit later. But, I'm a proud Humber grad. I graduated from their postgraduate journalism program, which was temporarily suspended, actually, due to enrollment numbers that you touched on there. Thankfully, they were able to bring it back this year, but who knows what the future holds. And I
Right.
remember when I was a student, I remember writing for our school newspaper. And yes, it was a part of the curriculum, but it was also our first, dip in the sand when it comes to making contacts, community building with local law enforcement and going to town halls. It sort of provided this opportunity to build some sort of relationship with the community around you so that when when you go into the real newsrooms, when you start work, you already kind of have built up contacts and a bit of a base for yourself. What is it about journalism at the grassroots that starts at these college programs that really makes it that much important?
Well, I mean, journalism in itself is important. And I'm obviously, you know this, Marie. I'm not telling it to anyone, probably even listening to this, but the grassroots part and community and local and trust in local sources is all part of it. Um, to see some journalism programs disappearing is sad. Uh, but at Fanshawe and the other ones that are continuing, I can only speak for Fanshawe, but our enrollment for our 2-year diploma multimedia journalism program, we have double the confirmations compared to this time last year. And it's possible it could be waitlisted. So I think that there's still an appetite for it. I think that because we're seeing so much of uh, lack of trust and wanting to make sure voices are heard. We see polarization, whether it's in social media, politically, the algorithms, all of that. I think young people, there's really a future that they're feeling a calling towards this, which is what journalism is. You are trying to represent your community and get the answers. And so that's obviously the basis for any journalism program where you need to develop the contacts, you need to get the experience, whether it's now multi platform. I'm pretty sure every journalism program should be that way by this point. Our program has always been started as broadcast, never did print, but we're certainly been in the website space for a long time with our online journalism. So I think it's an evolution of media, but I think it's now an evolution of the importance and recognition of trying to cut through the noise, the need for fact checking and accuracy, the concerns about the reliability of AI, all of these things and making sense of the world. What do tariffs mean? Like there's a lot of stuff that our students are learning and discussing and finding those contacts. And you're absolutely right. There is an important training ground. And I've always thought of our colleges and the types of programs that we are the farm team, before they get to the big league, where they're put through the paces and really understand the ethics and even legal aspects of what you're doing. It's so in depth in terms of what it is that a student is learning, and certainly transferable skills as well in their life and also in any other career if they wanted to go outside of journalism, right?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that you touched on, evolving media, because we cannot deny this big shift away from traditional, broadcasting schemes such as like an AM dial on the radio, or physical newspapers, or broadcast TV. It's not as sexy as it used to be, and a lot of young people, especially folks like young folks, are heading to social media to consume their news now. And while it can be more accessible for young people, barring the meta ban on news, it can also be a very slippery slope in terms of what's real and what's regulated and what's not. You touched on AI there. Getting rid of these programs, how do you think that plays into the slippery slope of it all?
Well, I think there are a lot of people, or they call themselves personalities, who may think that they are, reflecting what is happening in community, but maybe not with the same lens or fairness in terms of the coverage of that story. So I think that would be a concern, but it's also good that there are multiple platforms for those messages to get out too. So you're kind of like, yes, traditional media obviously has a place. And I think just even an awareness of even where you're consuming stuff on social media, what is the trust value or credibility, or what can you compare to other media coverage on any particular topic? Is anyone else doing this, or have I been fooled again? So I think that part of it is so important.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me to my next point of how we're seeing this intersection of online content creators and storytellers. And while I think it's a good thing that we're kind of transforming the role of the traditional news anchor, to that of a figure that's maybe more digestible in this digital landscape, I do also think that influencers, they cannot replace the job of a journalist. Maybe that's a hot take. Maybe I might get some flack for that. But some influencers are natural storytellers, and it comes authentic to them, and I can appreciate that. But there is a difference between influencing and storytelling, and I think those lines do tend to get a little blurred these days.
Well, I think so too. And I think if you talk about trust in media and people talk about, I don't know who to trust or whatever, I do think part of that is where are you going to get that? Is it actually based in attribution and facts and all of that sort of thing that a journalist would do? Or is it more commentary or opinion? A lot of people, everyone's entitled to my opinion, rather than, just thinking about it, reflecting what your community and other people are talking about. So I think it's a little bit of the difference that a journalist is not self serving, whereas an influencer, they may be kind of following the trends and trying to reach a particular audience, much like the algorithms and other people are doing, they're feeding the audience what they want because that's their paycheck, right?
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of Fanshawe, the programs that were canceled, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I have three here: the Advanced Live Digital
Mhm.
Media Production Program, the Broadcasting, Radio, and Media Production Program, and the Journalism and Television and Digital News Program. Now, I know that you did mention that one of the other programs, I can't remember the name right now, it doubled in enrollment this year.
That's mine, which is the multimedia diploma. So, I mean, obviously colleges are kind of trending. The big date that they're looking for now for accepting offers would be May 1st. There are all these different deadlines and things that are trying to be met. But at least for our multimedia journalism program, we have double the number of students that we had this time last year who have confirmed they're coming, and we also have higher enrollment of people who are considering and just simply need to make that decision. So that's a positive thing. Not so positive for us, I guess, is the connection with our radio and media production program, which has been a longstanding collaborative at Fanshawe College with our CRTC licensed station, student run, has been would have been cut. It's 48 years, I think. So, anyhow, that part of it will be changing with no new enrollment coming in the fall. We no longer have the pathway, which was our television news program, now television digital news. It was a 1 year postgraduate program. So that is no longer a pathway. And advanced live digital media production, it was a relatively new program at Fanshawe. I do think that there were a lot of international students in that one in particular. Um, and and that's what had happened with some of the post-grad certification programs, I believe, where it had become a bit more reliance on having international students who already had some post-secondary education come here to finish off or top up their education.
Yeah. You touched on a big elephant in the room here. We're talking about Fanshawe is their CRTC licensing. And I guess what I want to know is when you guys, the staff at Fanshawe, got that email saying that, the broadcasting, the radio and media production program was going to be canceled. What was the talk about? What was the talk like and the vibe and the energy amongst staff?
I am not in the radio program, but I obviously have a history of working in radio. And we work closely together. Our staff and offices, our broadcast center is a combination of both radio students working in the space and our journalism students work in the space. So it's obviously the mood was somber. A lot of upset students. I mean, it's natural. I'm sure this happened at other colleges who had to make these same decisions. And it's a little bit up in the air, I guess, in terms of what will happen with that license if we are able to continue, because that would be fantastic. That live element of learning is so important. But we're just waiting to hear, I guess, on what decision is made in that regard.
Right. Yeah. Now, where do you see the future of college journalism programs going from here amid these cuts? I know this is a 2 year program or a 2 year time frame given by Ottawa to try these international student visa cuts. But where do you see the future of college journalism going from here?
Yeah, I think the ones that are still existing just keep doing what you're doing. Young people are interested, they're engaged, they want to be doing this. I think that we're seeing, despite some of the cuts that we've heard about that had happened, we also see expansion happening with smaller markets picking up some of the licenses that Bell let go, CBC expanding into underserviced areas. There are positions, and even when we talk to our program advisory committee members who work within the industry, there are opportunities to get into it now, even right out of college, that compared to, the depth of experience that had been wanted. So I think we'll see where it goes. Maybe I don't want any programs to close, don't get me wrong, but maybe focusing on having some fewer vibrant programs versus all colleges or multiple colleges offering it could also help, right? I think that there's always going to be a need, and I think it's important that we keep some of these programs going and vibrant. And if that means that some need to cut back and focus in other areas of expertise on their campuses, it's not for me to say whether that's a good or bad thing, but certainly that expansion of colleges versus, when I look back when we first started, there were very few colleges specializing in journalism, right? So I think it's just evolved and it will continue to evolve, and everyone will find their space at the colleges as they're making some very difficult decisions.
Yeah. What do you tell future students that want to get into journalism, whether that be broadcasting or multimedia? What do you tell them, as they see these cuts and they perhaps feel discouraged?
Yeah, please do not feel discouraged. There is a place for you. You are needed. It's a career that matters. It has purpose. Your community and local connections mean everything. It's it's part of democracy. You do need to have a calling to this, and if you feel called, even if everyone else is discouraging you, that there isn't a future, just go for it because you will find your place in it. It's hard work, but there is a place for you and it's needed now more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Gina Lorentz, professor and coordinator for Fanshawe College's Multimedia Journalism Program and president of the Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation for Canada. That was the big story. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode by emailing us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. You can find us on the Seeker app or on all your favorite podcast players. Please rate, review, follow, and share. I'm Maria Kestane. Thanks for listening.